Hello, I'm Wade Henderson. Join me now for conversations with our neighbors who create visual art. This is Delta Hands. In this edition, we'll see waves of water and light, well-tuned balance, and expressions of life in color. We begin with Emery Clark, who has encouraged or helped make much of the public art in New Orleans. For this story, we see her more personal work. In her studio beside Lake Pontchartrain, combining photography and watercolor, she creates waves of peacefulness.
Research has shown that there are three things that work across all cultures and all personality types that reduce stress, reduce anxiety, reduce perceived pain, and that a number of other things, plus that they're actually showing in clinical studies that they promote healing, and those are a caring, nurturing face, one key of music, and pastoral landscape seascape images, but particularly images of calm water. And I think all along, my entire life, I've been drawn to that. And I think when we work with things we're really familiar with, it's a genuine kind of expression. And all my life, I've been drawn to the water and drawn to that kind of sense of peace and serenity that it creates and comfort. And you look at 20 years of water imagery, and all of them are different. And it's the kind of repeated pattern, and what I try to capture is like what you felt when you saw this, and the subtleties in nature that make people feel like they've seen that, or they've been there, and they've had the same kind of realization about it. And there's something comforting, there's something peaceful, there's something serene about it. I use imagery that is something that is familiar, and I use the seascape, I use the landscape as a metaphor, and a metaphor of what we all go through, like what you're saying, and all the things that we know because of what's familiar to us in the world, and then kind of as a metaphor psychologically for everything else, spiritually, philosophically, intellectually. And this is use of imagery to communicate. You know, I think all art communicates. And what I'd like to do is communicate what gives me that sense of peace, that sense of calm, and try and distill that image so that others can share it. Because I do think the landscape, the seascape is, you know, it's what we all share. It's the commonalities, the earth, the water, the air, and that we share these commonalities, so it's a vocabulary. It's an unspoken vocabulary that we all share, and that people can look at that and have that same sense of that they've been there and they've seen that. And genuine art is generated from who you are and where you've been, your experiences. And I think socially, historically, culturally, it's just, and artistically, I mean creatively. I mean, Louisiana is such a treasure trove for artists. I think this is an incredible place where people are given the freedom to develop their genuine and unique expression. It's out of the mainstream. I mean, I think people have come to appreciate it more, but people are not creating formula mainstream art. They're creating something that's from the heart. I've always been interested in art integrated into the culture. And I always saw that in our culture, you know, I mean, we know that in the last century what's happened is the artist has become more removed from society, and they create objects and they're archived and put into places where people don't see them enough. And that I'd like to see a more seamless integration into contemporary culture. I think there's been a change in the consciousness about art, and I think people in Louisiana accept it more readily. I always believe that the more opportunities other artists have, the more opportunities for all of us. Art, a lot of art, it's not magic, and it's so interesting how it's perceived by the culture. It's a lot of hard work, it's a lot of technical skill, and it's just a lot of time. And you tell students, and I also tell students part of it is the whole life experience. And I do think that it's an instinctive thing when you really want to draw and paint and share something that way. And all my life I did it. And I went back and forth about what to pursue professionally. And I thought about different things and went back and forth. And I think what was the conflict for me always in the art world was wanting to make sure that what I did was relevant and relevant to others. And that so much of the work is in the studio. But I think being able to work in public art and to have had the opportunities I've had in the schools, that helped bridge that gap for me. Because I feel very committed to that idea that if you're going to make it, to put it out in the world and to share that creative experience. And so much of it, and I think as you get older, you look back and it's what's so familiar. And I grew up as a child going to a fishing camp on the lake and living on the bayou, near the bayous. And so much of that, you've seen it so often, and that's why it's yours to share. I like to work large scale because it kind of fills your visual field and you get a sense of being there and that sense of environment. When you work with realism, that working with color and light, that you find that there's so much abstraction and pattern and color and light difference in the details. And a lot of the pieces you see around the studio, that's what they deal with. And dealing with that is where you find that balance, I think, and how, what we're seeing and sharing that. And, they have people recognize those same details when you look into deep water, or when you look at the shadow of a wave, or you look at the light in a storm. And sometimes after you've worked on a realistic painting, particularly like the ones I've mentioned, when you're looking at the abstraction in the detail, it becomes very abstract to you, and you have to stand back to and take a break from it to see the image again. When the children were younger, I focused on different things, which were wonderful. And that was the best time of life, and you learn so much from them to bring back to your art. And I feel like I've seen so much through their eyes. Art is a way of life. It's not just the images you create. And I hope in my art to influence the world as a more peaceful, more serene, more a kinder, gentler place. And for my children to share that. That the most important thing for them is to be kind, to be good, to be generous, and to see, to share what they see in the world. And that's their gift, is to share that.
Next on Delta Hands, swinging fun and the many faces of life.